and welcome to the Bible for Worship at St. Paul Lutheran Church on this 12th Sunday after Pentecost, when our gospel reading is written in Matthew chapter 15, verses 21 through 28. Jesus left that place and went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Just then, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David! My daughter is tormented by a demon." But Jesus did not answer her at all. And the disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away, for she keeps shouting after us." Jesus answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." Jesus answered, "It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed from that moment. The Gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. What is it that makes for faith? O woman, great is your faith. Matthew tells us, Jesus said here in verse 28. And clearly for Matthew and his community, as kind of the tagline or the culmination of this story, "O woman, great is your faith," means she is one of us. Now, that would not have been obvious. Matthew makes that clear in the way he tells the story. He uses a rather archaic term to describe her, calls her a Canaanite. That's not contemporary language for Matthew's community or for Jesus in the first century of the Common Era. It's the old language of biblical Israel, reminding the reader of the Canaanites who were there before Israel came into the land. This is about as alien as one can talk about in describing a person who resides there alongside Israel. And even the reference to Tyre and Sidon, even though it's reported earlier in Matthew's gospel that Jesus did great and mighty works in Tyre and Sidon, again, those are places that are clearly identified as outside the territory of Israel. And of course, Jesus says here that he was only sent to the lost children of the house of Israel. And that echoes what he had said to the disciples back in chapter 10 when he sends them out and says, "Go nowhere among the Gentiles or into a Samaritan village, but go only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." So it's not obvious that this woman is one who, at the end of the story, would be recognized by Matthew and Matthew's community as one of us. But the voice of Jesus decides that for them. On what does that voice depend? Well, great faith. "O woman, great is your faith." And in Matthew's gospel, this phrase about faith or great faith occurs frequently with regard to people who are outside Israel. The centurion whose servant Jesus heals in chapter 8, the friends who carry a paralytic to Jesus and ask Jesus to heal him have faith that Jesus recognizes and responds to. The woman who comes up and touches the fringe of Jesus' garment in order to be healed from her bleeding is recognized for her great faith in chapter 9. And Matthew, too, helps us out by being really the only gospel that puts any emphasis at all on the notion of those who have little faith, those who are anxious about what they'll wear or what they'll eat. In the Sermon on the Mount, chapter 6, are those of little faith. The disciples and Peter when they're in the boat on the storm-tossed lake, or when Peter tries to walk across the water at Jesus' command, and they're fearful and distressed and panicked about the situations they're in chapter 8, chapter 14. These are called out as little faith. Or when the disciples complain in chapter 17, they haven't been able to do the healing that Jesus was finally able to do. It's because they are of little faith, just as they were when they had forgotten to bring bread with them and were afraid they would go hungry. They were those of little faith in chapter 16. So this contrast of those who have faith, and often it's those who are outside Israel, contrasted with those who are of little faith, who are consistently the Matthean community and the disciples in the story. That contrast helps us to see that for Matthew and for his community, faith is confidence in God's presence and God's care. Confidence that when God is with us, we have all we need. And that confidence leads then to the kind of perseverance of a centurion who asked a Jewish healer to heal the centurion's servant at a distance. Jesus doesn't even go to the man's house. Just like with this woman, Jesus never goes to see the daughter who's demon possessed. But this woman, confident of what God's power is, takes 3 different answers of no and keeps coming back with her confidence and her perseverance until Jesus says, "O woman, great is your faith." In the structure of Matthew's gospel, this is part of what is the 4th section of it. Matthew's gospel can be structured according to 5 great discourses or preachings or teachings that appear at chapters 5 to 7, chapter 10, chapter 13, chapter 18, and chapters 24 and 25. And this one, leading up to chapter 18, is about the life of the community, the stories that get told from the end of chapter 13 through the end of chapter 17, like this one, are all about these questions of what makes for faith, and who's part of our community, and how do we live within community together. And then the teaching in chapter 18 is all about community and forgiving one another and living gently with one another and how to resolve disputes and conflict within the community. Take these 2 dynamics in this story together, that faith is confidence in the God who is present with us with everything we need, which leads to perseverance. And how do we live in community? And what Matthew is showing us is that all can belong to the Jesus community. Not only those who have been part of biblical Israel or the Jewish community up to that point, but a centurion, a Canaanite woman from Tyre and Sidon. These are people who, because of their confidence in God and their perseverance, can also be part of that community because they persevere in that confidence in God's power and God's blessing. God bless.